we are dying permanently. So life is a permanent disequilibrium. How do I find that balance? Very problematic. The thing is how to confront life in this sense. And perhaps it's reasonable, and perhaps there is actually no other way, but to understand that life always requires that you fight because there are many adversities that one needs to not overcome, but flow through. And it requires that you finally try to figure out who you are and what you can do and which are the possibilities and which are those that are no longer perhaps possibilities. And there is this beautiful verb that Guattari, there is this verb that he invents, which is in French horizonner, right? So to horizon, but as a verb, right? So you need to be constantly horizonizing, right?
And what do you think does a non-fighting life leads to?
By fighting, nonetheless understood that I don't mean that one needs to be stubborn and understanding that one needs at all costs, right, to trace one way. So I'm not saying this. I'm saying being aware of the difficulties that life presents and trying to surf through them. This is what I understand to fight, and understanding that each thing is somehow things become clear through contrasts. Is this very old notion of polemos, of war in Heraclitus, right? Which means what it means. What is it that life which is not struggle for leads? Well, I presume that to some sort of self-referential inertia, and therefore to some sort of creative collapse, and to some sort of subjective block. So I assume that if one does not need to test oneself anymore, if one does not need to reshape oneself anymore according to the new challenges that life brings, I presume that lives become a closed circuit, which you've asked where does it lead? I would say that literally nowhere.
And how do you find the balance between planning and play, like between planning and flowing?
Planning and flowing, which I would like also to think in terms, I tend to think recently in terms of the contrast between house and cosmos, right? How do I find that balance? Very problematic. And indispensable though, to find and to work out. So I find it very problematic because there is no set of instructions in order for you to learn how to find out to find that balance out. But little by little you should learn from your own experience and from others' experiences as well, and from your reflection on what you experience, which is something that we usually tend to omit, as though experience were enough. It never is. You need to reflect on it. But something problematic that you need to fight for as well. Always being aware, this is an important thing I think too, always being aware that that balance is never going to be there in the first place. So life is a permanent disequilibrium between play and planning. And it's never going to change. It's always going to be in disequilibrium, the relation between these two poles, because you're never going to find out a balance. So the thing I would say is more to try to find a way through that equilibrium, with balance being there as a sort of idea that you may project and that may serve you as a reference, but which is never going to be materialized. And in that sense, it will help you to deal better with disequilibrium, but never suppress disequilibrium. I don't think that you can suppress disequilibrium in life. From the very moment, for example, in which we are dying permanently, right? Each day we die a little bit, in the sense that our cells, especially after a certain point, which you may not have reached yet, or maybe near to reach, your cells are going and your bones and your tissues, biological tissues, anatomic tissues are going to become not as fresh as they are now. So we are walking every day towards death. That's very, very, very serious a realization. And yet at the same time, and it's true, we feel ourselves more and more alive, especially if we do have a rich life, if we are able to really, as I was saying before, to figure out who we are, to trace new horizons. We feel ourselves more and more alive. So which is the truth? Are we walking towards death? Is it that we're more and more alive? Both things at the same time. At the same time. There you have the disequilibrium. There's no equilibrium between those things. And life is trying to find a path through them. There is this beautiful image that a contemporary Brazilian anthropologist plays with, Eduardo Viveiros de Castro. He says that walking is simply a controlled way of falling. Not the same.
We live in a lot of realities. And
Yes.
coming back to your first thought, do you think that human existence is more like a preparation for death or more like a preparation for life?
Well, certainly for life, in the sense that that is what makes human existence. Once death occurs, there is no longer human existence. So even if both things are very important, because also one needs to prepare oneself to die, in the sense that one needs to accept first and foremost that one is mortal. It's interesting that the ancient Greeks did not use so very much the term anthropoi, right? Humans, to name humans, right? But thenetoi, which means mortals, right? So one needs to prepare oneself to be mortal, and perhaps many of the problems that we live in the world come from the non-assumption of mortality. We just doesn't matter, we don't care, we don't want to be affected by anything, we just want to continue and to go ahead. And that is of course extremely dangerous, and just look around at the world and see which are the consequences. How many things are sacrificed because we do not accept, we do not assume our finitude, our mortality, the limits that reality imposes. That is also why I was saying that one needs to cope with the limits and reconfigure oneself before them. So one needs to prepare oneself to die, of course. But mostly human existence, human life is about living, and therefore one needs to prepare oneself to live. And I think that ultimately this is not only what we have been talking about today and the other day, but I guess this is what you talk with all the different and very interesting people that you interview, right? How is it that we can live? How is it that we can prepare ourselves to live a better life, right? And how is it that we can do in order to feel that we are living a better life, right?
But do you think that people have difficulties to accept the death because they don't know how to live?
I think we tend to have difficulties to accept death just because we don't want to die. We don't want to go. I mean, perhaps at a certain point we may want to if we feel extremely tired. If there are too many no's, going back to one of the things that we discussed, if we accumulate too many no's, only no's. If something happens that suddenly erases completely the meaningfulness, not the meaningfulness that when one may have conferred upon life at a certain point, but really almost everything. How to tell that? Well, I don't know. But one may be in position to decide this, and one may need to be, of course, one is always free to decide this. Then one may say, well, it's finished. There is no longer sense in this. And then one may just want to die, right? But in principle, we don't want to die. In principle, we want to stay here. We want to see the sunshine every morning. We want to have new opportunities, new chances to do what we like. We want to have new chances as well to learn new things. We do not, our drives, in other words, do not push us towards death. The death drive is not the most important of the drives that move us. It can be there, and well, one may need to cope with it if it is there, but our drives are drives towards life. So I would say that we want to be alive. We want to be here and now. We don't want to go.
If you watched the video until now, this is your sign to subscribe.
And if you have any more questions or a completely opposing opinion, write it down in the comments below.
Thanks for watching and see you next week.